Hi, good morning. Thank you for watching the Seller Fuel podcast. Today's we have amazing guest, Richard, CEO of Outstar. Outstock is a one-click supply chain for Amazon sellers to change the way they operate their e-commerce store with inventory planning and cash flow projections. And he's on a mission to give e-commerce merchants the power to sell anything and also build most profitable businesses. And thank you for joining us on the podcast today, Richard.
Yeah, hi, Jason. Great to meet you.
So I just want to make sure we are going live on the page and in our Facebook communities. So if anyone that's watching, please also let us know in the comment where you tuning in from, or if you are watching the replay, please also let us know. And you feel free to ask questions either in the live recording or in the replays on any question that you have regarding about inventory plannings, logistic, and that's what we are talking about today. Is we're going to be talking a lot about inventories plannings and different struggle that the seller have. But first of all, Richard, can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, um, my background was I was selling Amazon as a side hustle for a while before I realized that, well, maybe I can help people with solutions, technology solutions, right? That's where AI stock came to the horizon. So, especially during the pandemic, 2020, 2021, we saw that supply chain can be a bottleneck. And, you know, people always take supply chain for granted, right? Uh, when it's running fine, then, you know, um, then people will not see supply chain as a problem. So myself, I was born and raised in Indonesia. I was educated in Taiwan, came here 10 years ago, and tried to build the something in the supply chain technological solution to help the e-commerce ecosystem.
Okay, thank you for sharing. So it's actually a very common e-commerce or I guess entrepreneur story that you find a solution that you're trying to solve for yourself, then you end up creating a business out of it. So that is that pretty accurate description on how
Yeah,
the motivation? Okay, got it.
pretty
So
much, yes.
can you also tell us a little bit more about like why you even start with the software company that you have?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course, right. So again, it starts with the pain point, right? The pain point is we found out that many sellers, emerging sellers, making millions of dollars in that early couple of few years. These people are they're good with product research. They are not. They're good with product launching, and but they're not. They're struggling with operations. They're not so good with this kind of thing, right? So we asked them like, how did you exactly manage your inventory? And they say like, we know how to reorder. We know how to do this. When we um, dive deeper, we found out that all of them are using spreadsheets. Okay, again, nothing is wrong with spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are great, right?
Yeah.
But um, when your team is growing, when you have multi people in your team to touch on one spreadsheet, that might be an issue there, right? And then time to times, there's no guarantee that the number in the spreadsheet is still intact. It's always, there's always a couple different things happening with the spreadsheet. It's fragile, easily to to break, right? Yeah, that's why we want to provide a complementary solution for the spreadsheet, which is the AI stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. So, what is your general experience working with like so many different, I guess, Amazon or e-commerce entrepreneur in general through your journey of building up the company?
Yeah. Well, I would say um, Amazon entrepreneurs, they're like one of the smartest entrepreneurs in the world because when I count, there are roughly like 70 different areas that these entrepreneurs need to learn, need to be excel at, right? And supply chain is just it's a major portion. It's a supply chain. If it is taken care well, this will help you to go for a longer game, right? So the experience is like they're all smart. They need help. Most of these average Amazon entrepreneurs, I mean, they don't really understand too many things going on, especially when it comes to numbers, when it comes to the strategy, and I'm happy to see like the ecosystem right now is more and more mature these days, right? So these Amazon entrepreneurs, like I would say, I can classify these entrepreneurs into different group based on their annual revenue. Like people making 1 million is different with people making 2 to 3 million. We call the 1 million one, we call it probably like solopreneurs, because mostly they're like working from their bedrooms during this air quote during this pandemic, right? And then um, the one that making like probably 2 to 3 millions, we call it teampreneurs, because these entrepreneurs, just like you, Jason, they know how to build. I mean, they're transitioning from one into multiple people in the team. They start to delegate. They build the uh,
Mhm.
the the system, right? The system delegation, and it's working. And then after that, um, this entrepreneur, they will move into high growth brands, meaning like they might be selling like 5 to 10 million, something like that, right? So, and they're a little bit different too. With this 5 to 10 million brands, in the context of inventory, they probably have like dedicated logistic people to do certain things, right? And again, I'm saying like having the dedicated supply chain people is good actually, but you don't want this kind of job to be handled by 5 10 people in the team, right? You
Yeah.
probably just want to be handled by one or two, the great one that, and then this software will um, uh, will up the game of the supply chain. So these people, dedicated people, they can see more high level visibility, and then they can make a better decision. And all of the calculation, all of the low level, those kind of thing, day in day out, this kind of thing. Hopefully, the software, the system will handle it itself. Yeah, and then
Yeah,
the business owner can take a decision. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's kind of the similar journey I'm going through. We are not quite at a 10, I mean, 5, 10 million market. We're like low seven-figure brand still. And I'm really working on building the teams. We in a brand. Actually, one of the position we're looking to hire right now is a dedicated supply chain manager. That can manage the inventory, maybe also do some of the sourcing process, and also looking into the overall like catalog and see if there's any things that we can improve on the logistic workflow to make sure we're ordering in the right quantity in the right frequency, and also trying to get the best price. There's definitely a lot of nuances in inventory management just by itself, and I think that's also why there's so many different solutions out there for inventory. I think AI stock is definitely one of a really good solution out there, but it's also a crowded space. That's I know there's a couple other supply like provider that's also trying to solve the similar issues. So that lead to my next questions. I guess from your perspective, in a nutshell, what is the most important aspect of the inventory planning that the e-commerce entrepreneur should think about?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So let me go back one step into like inventory
Mm.
planning, inventory management, right? So I was asked this kind of question before. This is the way I answer it. So this is inventory management. Inventory management is like a robot. You need to tell me where to go, take a right, take a left, right? So when you do inventory management, you need to put the numbers, correct?
Yeah.
Inventory planning is the one who is calculating what numbers to put in, right? So let me um let me give you a quick perspective from the sellers, right? Um, when you are $1 million sellers, right? You might have three most important questions, and this three is like, when I'm going to be out of stock, am I at the risk of out of stock for any of my SKUs, and when I need to know that, right? Number two, when should I place my next order? Number three, and then how many should I place my next order? And then number three, what my sales like, what my seasonality, this kind of thing, right? So this is what we call inventory planning. You need to understand like what to plan, especially with the after the after we went through this pandemic. We know exactly, when the supply chain woes, when this happened, it seems like this is breaking all of our business, but actually it's not. If we know how to plan, it's just taking a little bit more time, right? But if you know how to plan it earlier, in advance, everything should be fine, right? So when you ask me back, what is inventory planning? That is inventory planning, and you're not planning it just for the next order, but you're planning for next order, next order, and so forth until a reasonable period of time in the future, right? Why is this important? Of course, it's important. You need to know your sales. You need to know how your inventory is going to answer that demand, right? That's why you don't want to slow down your PPC when it's time to push more, right? And then the most important thing about this, the last, I think the most important is like your cash flow and your expansion, right? Because now when you know your sales, you know your inventory, you know your cash flow, then you know like how to expand. Who doesn't want to have business expansion these days?
Yeah, and I think the Amazon business is getting more and more complicated throughout the years as more competition is coming in, and also the people that's coming in is also become more sophisticated. Traditionally, you just need to be good at doing listing optimization, doing being good at doing advertising inside the Amazon ecosystem. But nowadays, you really need to also have an external like audience outside of Amazon, like we do with emails marketing that we're doing, social media marketing. And but inventory is really a most important pillar of all the activity that you're doing as an e-commerce business, because without inventory it's kind of like, I think the analogy I can think of is kind of like the blood of the whole businesses. Without inventory, the business just die, because like, why are you selling? How are you going to generate revenue? And the other big pain point, at least for those of us that's selling on Amazon as one of the main channel, is once you lose inventory, you get out of the stock, you lose all the momentum on Amazon that you need to rebuild. And with the Amazon algorithm, the way it works, you will start losing all the ranking that you're building up. Then the competition is going to get more review. You go into like a negative spiral, I call them, and it's really hard to climb back out of it. If you go out of stock, let's just say even for a week or sometimes a month, and it happened to some of our listing, we got suspended and we were like out for like 3 months because it got suspended for one of the what was the certification issue that we're facing. But we also have issue in the past where we run out of stock because one of our container got stuck outside of LA port for a month, like during COVID actually. So, but this is really important for the inventory planning. For those of us that's really looking to grow, how can we think ahead and maybe purchase a little bit more so we have some wiggle room? But also, this is like a very tricky balance for most of the e-commerce entrepreneur I talk to, is the balance between buying just enough inventory but doesn't buy so much you run out of cash completely, that you don't have cash for all the other operation expense. So yeah, so that's something I also want to share based on my personal experience. So
Yep. Thank you so much, Jason. Yeah. Uh, three things, right? If the sellers, $1 million sellers, they don't have the right amount of inventory at the right time, number one, you just have to slow down your PPC bids. And right, that's kind of like unfortunate. Because number two, you want to avoid being in a stock out. Stock out is really bad. You're not just missing out sales, like you just mentioned. Your the product ranking will plummet. Boom, right? Not good. And then as well as sellers will miss out big time on profits, on the growth, as well as on the healthy cash flow. Uh, with that, right? With having stock out, right? And then, like you just mentioned, number three, um, you want to have the right inventory at the right time, because if we are overstocking, we make ourselves less liquid in the business, meaning like we don't really want to put the valuable growth capital into different kind of into the slow moving SKUs, right? We hope that we can distribute that well. So that's why the ICF, the inventory cash flow planning, is important these days, right? Because and then as well as, I mean, overstock, you pay more, you have more cost overheads. I mean, we don't want that. I mean, it seems like it depends, right? It can be significant at some point, right? And I mean, it's just like why we have to pay for something that is not necessary, right? Something like that. Yeah. And inventory planning is important. It's just because simple, right? Why is it important for $1 million sellers? More efficient, save time, precise, well informed, optimized, right? Number two, it will improve our profitability, right? I mean, that's I would say profit is one of the reason we want to do the business, right? I mean, it depends if this is the most important, but this is very, very important, right? And then number three, inventory planning is very important. Like I said, is we need to project our business expansion. Business expansion, I would say, arguably, can only be done well if we know how to plan. Otherwise, we if we don't know how to plan, then if we if we fail to plan, then we plan to fail.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So it actually is a good segue to the next question I have. What do you think are some of the main factor the seller need to consider when doing inventory planning? And maybe if we can talk a little bit more about like the buying frequency, like either do you suggest the seller to think about buying in 3 months, 6 months, or any particular cadence that you recommend based on your experience that you would like to share?
Oh, okay. So this is a very good question. There are a couple of couple of consideration, right? I mean, we have in our software in the system, we call it like smart reordering optimization, right? I mean, let's say MOQ. MOQ is important, right? I mean, especially for the smaller sellers, MOQ is kind of like um giving them, like their threshold how to order, right? After that, when the sales is steady, then you need to consider a couple of things, right? We call it like inventory bound reordering. Re- the concept behind inventory bound reordering is basically you just want to order like just in time and just enough, right? You
Mhm,
want your next order to come just in time before your current inventory is out of stock, correct?
mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
And then by doing that, you want to calculate the days of inventory. Like how many days is left for your current inventory? It's just a couple of terms, right? We have all of this in the system in the AI stuff, right? And then you want to also consider like how to do this for multiple SKUs. That makes it a little bit more complicated, right? If you want to
Mhm,
have multiple SKUs in the same batch of reordering, right? That's why we have this as volume bound optimization. If you understand what I'm saying, right? Because now let's
mhm.
say you probably have how many SKUs you have, Jason?
8 parents cube. Yeah,
Eight parent SKUs, right?
yeah.
With some of the um, derivative SKUs might be like double or something like that, right? With different
Mhm.
color on this kind of thing, right?
Yeah, with
So let's
yeah,
say,
9 ingredient
yeah,
variation, yeah.
yeah. I'd say you have those, right? I mean, you still have to consider like all of the children's SKUs, right? Let's say imagine you have 20 SKUs, and then how do you distribute? How do you make volume bound and also distribute to different SKUs? Because all of the SKU they all have different velocity, right? Different velocity, and then then you still make it above MOQ, but you make it just in time and just enough.
Yeah,
That's very
and another thing you want to consider is like how can you fit it into a container that's optimizing for cost too. You ideally the
that's
cheapest container is like a 40-foot like high Q container. That's usually the cheapest if you can order that much to fit into the 40-foot container. But then that's also some additional calculation you need to see because it based on the size, based on the CBM of how big of the product is and all that. So
Yeah, we in AiStock does that one too. So basically, from the setting, you can pick your desirable container, right? And then we help you to decide. Sometimes, I mean, exactly like usually during the day to order. I mean, if you find out that you have some empty space in your container, basically we don't want to be in that situation that we are frantically trying to put some more SKUs, right? So
yeah.
but we can plan ahead for everything, and then sometimes you just have to wait a couple more days to get more stuff in, meaning like because now we are not looking for just the next order, but we are looking, let's say, for the whole year, the whole year or 2 years of reordering, right? Now you can see like exactly how your container is going to be filled up with the highest point of efficiency. Let's say you want to fill up to like almost I never wanted to make it 100% because 100% is ideal and never going to happen. Let's say
Mm-hmm.
90 something percent of efficiency, meaning like if your container is a XX food and then it has a XX CBM, and
Mm-hmm.
then you want to make sure because every freight forwarder they are a little bit different on how to manage this, right? Let's put
Yeah.
some a little margin in there. Let's say 90%, 95%, right? And then now you got your CPM. When you know your CPM, when you want to order, then the system will help you to calculate, and then you decide what kind of SKU to order. System will decide, and then to know like okay, at at what time the SKU will be in what inventory count, and then this is how much you need to order while still satisfying the MOQ, those kind of thing, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
that's what we call inventory bound plus uh, volume bound optimization for the container, right? And then the last one, which is like I would say probably the smartest one, which is the time bound. The time bound basically is just you know imagine this one, right? Sometimes one of the key of living a healthy life is like you eat regularly in a small amount of intake, right?
Yeah.
Instead of
Yeah.
have one big meal like this, right? You kind of like
Yeah.
eat 5 times a day, like smaller. That's the
Yeah.
concept of time bound
Okay.
reorder,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Meaning like now, instead of having 5 containers waiting for you in the Long Beach and you scratching your head like, how do I get these 5 containers to Long Beach to different fulfillment center, blah blah blah,
Yeah.
different long-term storage, right? Now you can have like you can slice it into different batches, and
Mm-hmm.
then I mean, let's say one of the benefit is if something happens with the vessel with en route those vessel, right? Only one container will be gone, and you just have to wait a couple more weeks until your next container will be there, something like that, right? So that's what
Mm-hmm.
we call it time bound, and time bound we can also optimize for volume bound as well. So this will make sure for one goal, which is you want to have a perfect inventory count. When I say
Mm-hmm.
perfect inventory count, your perfect inventory count will help you to to focus on the sales and marketing. You can do a lot of more creatives outreach, a lot of more unique, unique way. You can always push the pedal for your PPC if you want to. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Thank you for sharing that. Um, So can we tell the audience a little more about the software itself? What exactly does AI stock offer? It sounds like that definitely is a very comprehensive inventory management tool. But what is, I guess, what couple of features that you are really proud of compared to all the other potential solution out there that you want to feature or highlight?
Yeah, yeah. That's a good question. Thank you so much, Jason. I would say our core is doing the forecast, right? We want to help the sellers to be able to see where they are in the next 1 or 2 years. So again, um, we want to help the sellers to see like when to place their next order and how many, as well as not just the next order, but in the next 1 or 2 years of the whole inventory situation, right? We call it domestic inventory in the long-term storage and in the fulfillment center. And then how do you want to reorder? What's so a lot of factors, right? Lead time, days of inventory that will be will be in, and then once we know that, we want to help them to do the cash flow projection, right? Because now when you know how to order the inventory, you know when you're going to pay your supplier in China, and you can design your term, right? First payment, full payment, this kind of thing. You know exactly when. I mean, I'm not just saying the next order, but I'm saying for the next 2 years, you'll know exactly when. Probably you can get better deal. I mean, look, if you know what to order for the next 2 years, talk to your supplier, ask for more terms or ask for more discount. I think
Mhm,
once you have a quite a good relationship with them, these manufacturers they will always want to give you a better way to to make sure the business is going well for both sides, right? That's one way to see it, right? Then you know exactly when Amazon is going to pay you. Your paycheck is
mhm,
coming
mhm,
every 14 days. Hopefully Amazon is still keeping it that way, right? Once you know that, you know when you're going to pay your business expenses, right? Your PPC,
mhm,
salary, all of those. Put everything, boom, very simple. It's elementary math actually, but doing it in a very accurate way is another level, right? Very simple. Put it in, and then you know your business expansion. So hopefully, I want to see that $1 million sales, $1 million sellers that was a 10 out of 10 terrible crippling problem of this inventory. They can go from 10 out of 10 terrible into 2 out of 10, which means they can their pain is almost completely relief, because now you can see what is, what do you need to do. You can see when do you need to have a new injection for capital, growth capital coming, or this kind of thing. When is your next peak season, right? I mean, every business is different. I mean, you can have the big season, most of the sellers by holiday season in the US, or it really depends, right? February is also good season. July is also good season for some sellers. So the goal is simple. The goal is we want to AI stock offers to relieve the pain in the inventory cash flow planning, and make them to be a more like self-driving inventory, while they can push for sales.
Yeah, and I think inventory planning actually tied right into cash flow planning as well. And having that additional visibilities, either using the tool like AI stock, or if you want to come up with a crazy sophisticated spreadsheet, you can do that as well. And that's actually really important. And one tip I want to give to the listener or the viewer is, when you're doing the inventory planning, the way I do it with my bank account, I actually have one dedicated bank account just for inventory. So every single time I get like a payout on Amazon, I do a it's a business management process called Profit First. If you don't know, you can Google. There's a book called Profit First, where you allocate a percentage of your income into different bucket. And the way I do it is I dedicate a percentage of my business income into the inventory bucket. So I always ensure I have enough saved aside for inventory, because sometimes you can take a look at your bank account. Let's just say you have 50,000 in there, but it's all commingled together. You don't know how much it is for operation expense, how much it is for inventory that you need to save aside for, because maybe there's a container you're about to purchase that you need to pay the supplier, pay the freight forwarder. That's like 10, 20K that you need to save aside. And a lot of us, especially the e-commerce business owner, they didn't really do a good job on both the inventory planning and the cash flow planning, because it go hand in hand. Without the cash, how do you place the inventory orders? How do you pay for it? So I just want to give a tip on that, because that's something I also spent a lot of years trying to figure out my internal system, both for inventory planning and also for cash flow planning, because inventory is the most time, well, I guess cash intensive aspect of running an e-commerce business. So it's really, really important. So, but as we are closing to the end of today's interview, is there any particular customer success story that come to mind that you would like to share with our audience?
Yeah. So um, there was one of our customers that got an exit because of he planned the whole inventory and cash flow very well. As simple as that, right?
Mm.
You want to plan for
Yeah,
exit? Everyone wants an exit, but
yeah.
doesn't mean that everyone they know how to do it. And it's not a rocket science, but it's um, if we really want to have a total transformative level of optimization for our e-commerce operation, right? We need to understand what is the most important. Like you just said, Jason, the most important is sometimes the things that in front of us, but sometimes it can be very complicated. Easy on if you just have one SKU. When you have like more SKUs, when you have 10 SKUs, 20 SKUs, when you have 50 SKUs, I just talked with one seller, big sellers, that he is running 140 SKUs in
Mm,
Florida, right? And
mm,
he is running it with inventory and cash flow planning as well. He built his own system, and we just
mm,
talk. I introduced AI stock to him, and I think he's very very interested. I mean, he's running 140 SKUs, one
mm,
guy. Not easy.
mm.
This is and he's not aggregators. He's not agency. Just doing it from. He has a spreadsheet and he has a ERP system, which is
Okay.
which is good. Which is good. I
Yeah.
mean, he's
Yeah.
controlling the whole thing. But I said to him
Mhm.
like, hey, you can always you can always make things running by itself. I mean, you don't have to control every single thing, right? So again, The success story that I had here is like exit, right? So
Mhm.
exit is the science behind the exit. I mean, I'm not saying exit is a luck. Exit is a well planned science journey, right? The science behind that is having a really good books, right? The science behind having really good high performance on your e-commerce business is cash flow. It doesn't mean that you have more money than, I mean, but it means that you have better trends, right? This is what
Mhm.
aggregators they always look at, the trends, positive trends. It doesn't matter from
Mhm.
1 to 10 or is it from 50 to 100. As long as positive trends, then the value is there, right? The value is there, and just like how do we find the right buyers? How do we close the deal, right? So
Mhm.
by what is the science behind having good trends is the planning. It's knowing when is the knowing to plan well for inventory for your Santa, for your Christmas gift, right? Santa gift. Because if you're doing it well by July, you know exactly what you need to order for Christmas, right? Even for Christmas, you now you need to know. I mean, you know how to order for February, right? And we have to be very careful on this one. We all know with the Christmas time, holiday time, all of the what's they call all of the overhead is going up, right? The
Mhm.
storage and everything, right? I mean, again, you want to have just in time and just enough for your current business, right? Stock out is bad, really, really bad. Never stock out, but
Mhm.
overstock you can only allow overstock to happen rarely. Never stock out, rarely overstock, and then plan well, and then I think you will get an exit.
Mhm. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Where can people find you?
Um, you can find me in the LinkedIn.
Okay, I will also drop a link to your website. So for those of you that's either listening to or watching the replay, you should be able to find a link as well. Feel free to
Yeah.
check out AI stock and everything they do, and see if that will be beneficial for the business. And thank you again for being on our podcast today. It was our honor to have you as a guest. And any other last word that you want to share before we end the interview today?
Nope. I hope that this year everybody is doing well in their business. It's a good season. I think I see outside everything is slowing down. Um, um, Cryptocurrency exchange, boom, big time this year with FTX and a lot of layoffs outside. But I think e-commerce is not going to slow down anytime soon. I think it's going to have, this is still the first day of the e-commerce, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for being
Thank you
on.
so much, Jason.